Hey guys, Godfather of Anxiety here. I just wanted to do a quick video on seasonal affective disorder and what we can do to combat this. This time of year, the winter starts to, at least where I live here in the Northeast of the United States, the winters tend to drag on, they get cold, and there's limits that we have as far as, things we can do as far as getting out and doing things outside. Of course, if you dress for it, you still can go outside, and a lot of people actually love winter sports. But I just figured this time of year, probably we're all getting that feeling like, I always think of the movie Groundhog Day, and Bill Murray's line about how it's always cold and dreary. I can't remember exactly how the line goes, but it's the movie is definitely reminds you of this time of year. Actually that's almost a month away, but anyways, so what are some tips? What are some things we can do to keep it from being something where because guys, the worst case scenario here is people not making it to spring, right? Some people, their seasonal affective disorder is so bad that they make a decision they can't unmake. So what we want to do to avoid slipping into a deep depression, a deep clinical depression, and again, I'm not a doctor, always see a therapist, always talk to a mental health professional. That's going to be your best bet and your quickest way to get better from any mental health condition. But as far as tips that have worked for me personally over the years, there's some that I think are essential, and I think they're also universal from my research. It seems as though these are, the most important things you can do. And I'll start off. The first one I'll mention is light exposure. So obviously, guys, we're going to be somewhat limited to how long we can spend outside, depending on where we live. But that doesn't mean we can't go outside. We should still go outside for as long as we can. And we also should sit near windows. This is important. It's important for us. Light exposure is one of the best things we can do psychologically to keep us from slipping into seasonal affective disorder. So that's the first thing you want to do. They even suggest that you could try light therapy as well. But at least make sure you're getting outside, and make sure that when you're inside, you're sitting by windows, you're seeing the light, you're seeing the sun. These things sound like small things, but if that can keep you from spiraling into a deep depression, it's worth it, right? So the next thing, and really the rest of the video, and that's why this isn't going to be a long video at all, are just the things that I always mention that have been essential for me, not only to recover initially, but to stay recovered from the various anxiety conditions that I've battled over the years. So number one, exercise. I don't care if it's on a treadmill. I don't care if you're walking up and down your stairs. I understand, the economy right now is tough. So I don't know, I'm sure there's those of you out there who cannot afford a gym membership. But whatever you have to do, if, I'm fortunate enough, I do have a treadmill in my house, but I also have a gym membership, and that's essential for me in the wintertime. Without that, I can promise you guys that I would spiral into a depression. And I know this because the last time I was forced not to exercise, basically, was during the pandemic, and sure enough, I relapsed. So find something to do. This doesn't have to be some, horrifically intense exercise. This can be, like I said, walking up and down stairs. walking around your home, depending on how large your home is. Again, a treadmill, an elliptical, whatever. Just try to get 30 minutes if you can, at least a minimum of 3 times a week. That's what we want. Guys, you know what it could be? It could be going to the grocery store or a department store. You don't always have to be in there to necessarily buy. You can browse, you can look around, and you can count that as your exercise. The main thing is you have to get 30 minutes of exercise. And again, depending on your fitness level, this doesn't have to be anything other than walking. It can be more intense than that as well if you're physically able. But the main thing is, don't mentally get in that headspace where you're like, oh, it's winter, I can't exercise. It's the worst thing you can do. If you ever suffer from seasonal affective disorder, the absolute worst thing you can do is to adopt that mindset where it's winter, I can't exercise, I'm just gonna, sit in the couch and browse the internet, watch movies. Not that you're not going to do some of that. That's going to happen anyways. If you live where I live, and you're going to be doing a fair amount of screen time of some fashion anyways, because the winter is just not conducive to spending a long time out in the environment. But just don't get in that headspace where you're, I can't exercise anyways, because boy, that will send you down that spiral really quickly. At least it has with me in the past. Sleep. Make sure you're getting your sleep. I don't think there's anything more important than sleep when it comes to keeping mental health issues at bay. It gives your mind time to reorganize. It's when all the good chemicals are produced, good neurotransmitters are produced. Guys, you have to make sure you get your sleep. Also, this includes, if your spouse or your partner thinks you maybe have like a snoring problem, get a sleep study done. If when you wake up from sleep you feel exhausted, you have dark circles around your eyes, invest in getting a sleep study done. And you even with this Apple Watch I have, it will even tell you if it suspects that you are experiencing a cessation in breathing, and it will actually say that your breathing patterns suggest that you may have sleep apnea, which I think is pretty amazing how far we've come. But you need to get good quality sleep, at least the best you can. I know how difficult that is, especially for those of us who suffer from anxiety, depression. Sometimes we can sleep a long time and still feel exhausted. Sometimes we can have a really hard time staying asleep. But really try, and what does this involve? This means shutting off your screens a little earlier, a couple hours before bed. Get the lights off, and you might need to have, like for me, I have a fan on. I can't have absolute quiet. My mind is more likely to race, and I experience racing thoughts a lot more frequently if I don't have some type of noise in the background. And I know there's specific sound patterns you can listen to now that can really help. I have a relative who uses that to get to sleep, and it works really well for her. And she experiences anxiety as well. So, but make sure you get your sleep. Next thing, diet, guys. So a lot of you, you just got done with the holidays, so you may have put on some weight, right? And then also, if you live in an area like me, you're bound to be somewhat restricted in exercise. So diet becomes even more important, because I know for me, another thing psychologically that would really mess with me is when I put on weight. And I don't think there's anything more depressing than going over to a pair of jeans or a shirt and having buttons be tight, clothes don't look right on you. it's a terrible feeling. And for me, especially since I was chubby as a teenager, that kind of sends me into a dark headspace where, recalling all the times when my weight was a major issue when I was younger. So, as far as diet goes, I never get into what specific diet you guys should employ, because different diets work better for different people. The diet that you want to stay on, guys, is the one that you can stick to. The one that doesn't feel like a diet, the one that feels like a way of life. For me, for the last 4.5 years, that's been a lower carbohydrate diet with cheat days built in. And that works pretty well for me. It keeps me from getting, heavy to the point where it's uncomfortable. So, that tends to work better for men. We have faster metabolisms, and ketogenic diets work pretty well for us. I noticed that for some females, they work well. And for others, it's a female might be better off doing intermittent fasting or even like a Mediterranean style diet. But whatever the case, just don't give in to that urge, because for me, it's like it's a spiral. I can't exercise, so I'm starting to eat more because I eat when I'm bored. I'm an emotional eater. Then I get heavier. Then I get more depressed. Then I'm less likely to go out and do things because I don't really want to be seen when I'm heavy. Guys, the spiral, for most of us, we pull out of it when the spring comes. But, I know that I have people who watch this channel who are clinically depressed. And these suggestions are all just so that you guys avoid really falling into a pit of despair where you end up, again, making a decision you can't unmake, or even just getting yourself into a mental health crisis where you're, have to see a therapist every week, and you're trying different medications to pull you out of it. Again, I still take a medication, so I'm not against taking medication, but I don't think it's the first choice, and I don't think that, it's obviously going to be a magic cure. It's a tool. That's how medications worked for me. And so you want to get everything else in line first. And then, absolutely, if you need to take medication, then you'd be very wise to do so. And, again, it was essential in my recovery. So I would never say that that's not necessarily a possibly an important part of your recovery here. And this is one of the hardest ones, and I kind of just got into it when I was mentioning the spiral of, a bad diet and lack of exercise. But you need to maintain your social ties, your family, your friends. And I'm not talking about just FaceTiming. There's nothing wrong with FaceTime. There's nothing wrong with texting. But guys, we're human beings. We have 5 senses. Relationships are cemented and cultivated through being in the same room with somebody, where you can see their gestures, you can hear their laugh, you can use all 5 senses in your human interaction. That's going to be really important, and it's going to keep you. No matter if you say, I hate people, I don't like being around people, it doesn't matter, because we are social creatures by design. So without social interaction, when we become isolated, our mental health will suffer. And if you suffer or have a tendency to suffer from seasonal affective disorder, this is the worst thing you can do. Do not isolate. Make sure you keep a social routine. Again, it doesn't have to be some elaborate social routine where you are staying overnight at somebody's house, or you're going on something that is taxing in a stressful way where I have to go, or I'm gonna. but at least maintain them, and try to maintain it with a variety of people, your friends, your family. Don't get in that habit of isolation. That's, again, for people who experience anxiety and depression, they know where that leads. You know, everybody thinks, oh, I'm just going to isolate. I know I did. I didn't want to be around people when I was having intrusive thoughts. I didn't want to be around people when I was having panic attacks, when I was, you know, I wanted to lock myself in a dark room. I was dizzy all the time. Well, 100 pounds later, and, you know, 6 years later, I realized that that wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. So don't isolate. But that's about all I want to mention as far as things you can do to prevent or at least limit the amount of seasonal affective disorder you're going to experience, the amount of seasonal depression. And guys, just remember, you know, the days are getting longer. You're going to come out of this. You're going to be able to go out and do things. And, you know, that's really important, to keep an optimistic outlook and to stay busy. Like these suggestions that I mentioned here, really important, and they've helped me over the years. And I make sure, no matter how I feel after working all week, or I make sure I get to the gym, I make sure I do at least a 40-minute workout at least a couple times a week. If I can fit in more, great. But, you know, guys, that's what we need to do. It's not, for me, there's nothing, at my age, it's not about vanity. I'm going to the gym for mental health and for physical health. That's why I go. So it's about all I want to say in the video. Guys, look for me to, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to do some interviews. And I'm thinking of doing some different things with the channel. And if you guys have any suggestions about anything, feel free to leave them in the comments section. I know I've been kind of out of the loop here. Real life has been real busy, but I intend to kind of get back on the ball with this. And just thanks so much for the engagement with the channel. I really appreciate it. And until my next video, guys, take care.